Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ. Thank you so much for tuning in. Mary, good morning.
Good morning.
All right. We are going to jump right into many good topics today with our guest, Juliane Appling, Wisconsin Family Council. And we have been talking about what happened a year ago, Mother's Day, at her offices when they were firebombed by abortion terrorists. And Jane's Revenge claimed responsibility. We have not heard many details, and it's been over a year. Juliane Appling, welcome back to the podcast.
Well, good morning, David and Mary. It's always good to be with you folks. Thanks for
to
the
have you.
opportunity.
Okay, so like I told you on the phone yesterday, I don't know what you can and can't say, if there are any restrictions via some lawsuit or something that's ongoing in an investigation. But tell us what happened recently in recent months and where your case is at.
Well, sure. May 8th, 2022, we got firebombed, and I told the FBI and the ATF representative and the detective who was here from the Madison Police Department that afternoon, as they left with physical evidence, if you guys get going on this and really find the perpetrator soon, it won't be replicated all over the country. Apparently, they didn't listen to me because now we're at over 100 various types of attacks across the country.
Yep.
Pro-life groups, right?
Yes.
Churches, pregnancy care centers.
Yes.
So at this point in March, a gentleman was arrested in Boston getting on a plane to Guatemala. And if you have a second, I'll just quickly rehearse that story because I find it every once in a while that I know the facts behind this. But and by the way, what I'm saying, David, is what's been reported in the news so that my attorney cannot come and get mad at me.
Okay.
All right. So, but not everybody follows this. So if you recall, there was very specific graffiti left on one of our outside walls. It said, if abortions aren't safe, then you aren't either. It wasn't just graffiti.
That's
it was
a threat. Yes.
Yep. And it was a distinctive style of handwriting. And when I looked at it, I thought, wow, I recognize that style of handwriting. It's pretty close to what we call Danielsen, pardon my educational background, but educators know those things. And I said at the time, this could play into how they find this guy. So apparently earlier this year in January, there was a anti-police demonstration at the state capitol.
Right.
And some of the Capitol Police noticed that people were writing graffiti on sidewalks and noticed that the graffiti style, the handwriting style, was matched what was on our wall.
Oh my goodness.
So according to the police report that is now public, the police tracked these guys to a van, got the license plate number, and the owner of it was actually a SUV, and then started trailing this guy. And ultimately, in March, apparently he was eating outside somewhere, and he finished up and threw the refuse into a trash can. The police saw it, took that out of there, and the story says that they found a half-eaten burrito that they were able to peel the DNA off.
Oh my goodness.
And they matched it up with one set of DNA that they found here.
Wow.
Some reports said that they have 3 sets of DNA. That's been in the public news. So I'm not saying anything that you can go Google.
So what that means is there could be more than one person. There could be at least 3 involved on the attack on your office's Mother's Day 2022.
Yeah, absolutely. But one of the fun things about this is
fun
is it is because the headlines that came out after all of the arrests and everything happened they had great fun with the half-eaten burrito and the graffiti. That it sounds like a TV show. It's
I was
like
just going to say that.
Show.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So they he was arrested in Boston, so he had to be extradited back to Wisconsin. So that got done. They indicted him. This is a federal court case. It is being tried in the Western District Federal Court here that is headquartered here in Madison. So everything is taking place at the federal courthouse. In fact, in about a half an hour, they're going to be doing a teleconference on a status hearing to set the schedule, presumably for how the trial will proceed, on what dates all those things will happen. Interestingly, he pled not guilty. That's not surprising. But not only did he plead not guilty, he asked to be released during the course of this court action.
Wow.
And so, I got a call from the victims advocate and let me know all these things. And so I was very, very concerned. They did have an actual in-person hearing for that. I think it was 2 weeks ago in the courthouse here in Madison, the federal courthouse. And the judge there determined that he would not be released. So he is still retained in custody in the Dane County Courthouse.
Okay.
I don't know. I haven't gone in to read those records or anything. They are now available on a website that the federal government puts out for these kinds of cases. It's called PACER, and anybody can get an account. So I could see all of that. He had letters of recommendation from people saying, yeah, he's a good guy, and
of course,
you should let him out.
Of course, he's a good guy.
Oh, by the way, yeah, he's a pretty good guy. So that's where we are. The court case, I should know later today about the timing, when the actual trial will begin, when they'll require both sides to get the briefs in to the court so that they can consider this. So I don't know how long this will drag on. And whether or not, if the state loses, presumably they'll appeal. But I don't know. We're so early in this.
Right.
We're early in this on something that happened a year ago.
Yes. Well, Juliane, that's my next question. Why do you think it took so long? Because we know from even a year ago, there was one isolated, and we're talking about hundreds of cases against pro-life pregnancy centers or churches across the country. We're going to talk a little bit more about that from some information from the Family Research Council in a few minutes. But so why do you think they waited so long, or it took so long, when it only took the FBI or the Department of Justice 4 days to find someone and arrest someone who tried to apparently throw a Duraflame log on top of a roof of a Planned Parenthood in Kalamazoo, Michigan? It only took them 4 days to find the person, and there's hundreds of cases, including Compass Care in Buffalo, New York, so many cases that either are not solved, they don't have no person of interest, or they've just taken a long time to get an investigation going. What are your thoughts?
Well, let me say at the outset of my response on that, David and Mary, that generally speaking, and all my life, I personally have been a kind of, in the modern vernacular, a back the blue person. I've never been afraid of law enforcement. I've always seen them as a friend. We as an organization have been very careful to recognize the very good things they do. But I believe at the FBI level in particular, I don't know so much about the Madison. The Madison guy's been trying to do a lot to help us, I think. But I think the FBI has been so infiltrated with being kind of weaponized against conservative people.
Yes.
And conservative work. And I think that trickles down from the Biden administration. And there was an interesting hearing before Congress, and the Attorney General, U.S. Attorney General, was being asked by some of our elected officials, why was it so easy for you to go find people who were in some way, and maybe in a concocted way and trumped up charges, pro-lifers who you say were doing wrong things against pro-abortion people, but you can't go find the people who have obviously done firebombing and true vandalism and against the pro-life organizations and churches. And the AG says, well, look, the pro-lifers are right out there in daylight, and the guys that are doing the firebombing and all these things, they're doing that under the cloak of darkness.
Get them some flashlights.
Well, I hear you, but already the opinion, the national opinion of the FBI, I think if you took a broad swath survey on it, is suspect.
Yes.
People are not sure that they're doing their job, and we aren't sure they're competent. And then you have the Attorney General, our top cop in the country, coming out and saying, yeah, we can find people if they commit crimes in daylight, but boy, once they go into darkness, boy, the FBI can't find them.
Well, and this is playing out at a national level as we speak. They're having, the investigative things are going on in the House this morning, live.
Right.
Whistleblowers who are who are just normal, average, everyday citizens, but they're considered domestic terrorists for whatever reason. And now, so things are being uncovered a little bit. And I think this rabbit hole goes much deeper than we can imagine.
Well, it probably does, Mary, and I wish it didn't.
Yeah.
Americans want to believe that our government is not out to hurt them, is not playing favorites, is not taking an ideological position on these kinds of things. But the reality is that the more and more evidence that's uncovered, our suspicions are raised, and our suspicions are even confirmed at points. So I don't know. It would seem to me, when you walk out of the office, which they did on May 8th, with 3 paint cans full of physical evidence, and you don't do anything for 10 months,
Jeez.
that you can't match that DNA
Yep.
in 10 months? I mean, you guys haven't been down here. We're 3/4 of a mile from the Dane County Airport. This is a well-traveled road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, it was in the early morning hours, which they speculate somewhere between 5 and 5:30. The report was called in with flames and smoke coming out of our office at 6:15. But I just, to me, the bottleneck seems to have been at the FBI level, and I have my suspicions. But let me say this too: I am now considered a victim. I don't like that terminology, but in the legal system, that's who we are.
Mm-hmm.
Our organization is considered a victim, and I, as the head of the organization, am a spokesperson. So I'm trying very hard to not completely malign the FBI, and they've come to my office and said, "Oh, we work on this case every day." So I know what they say, and I know what I see. And by the way, full disclosure, I've never been the subject of an FBI investigation before, so I don't know how they go. I only see them on TV.
Yes.
So I don't have anything to compare it to.
Okay.
But it seems very slow. And when I saw within a week all of these things starting to happen all across the country, my heart just sank. And look, we're 1 out of 100. There's only been one over 100. There's been only one arrest made, one other arrest other than ours. One.
Wow.
That should not be happening. Something's wrong with the system.
Yeah, let me just bring in, by the way, I'm just checked over, there's that hearing going on right now in the House of Representatives on the weaponization of the federal government, and whistleblowers have come forward. Jim Jordan, God bless him, and some that are really trying to get to the bottom of this and expose it. I don't think you're going to be able to change it a lot, but at least you can expose some of it and just start whittling away at it. But pro-life groups, religious organizations were targets of the government. That's according to Jim Jordan. But Juliane Family Research Council did a survey in just the first, or a study in just the first 3 months of this year. There's been a steady rise of acts of hostility against churches. We're talking about criminal acts against churches in the first 3 months. 3 times the number of hostilities against churches in the same time frame last year. And we're on a road right now. If this continues, if this trend continues, it's going to be off the charts, record-setting for 2023. We've never seen this before, this many attacks on churches, religious institutions. Your thoughts on that? Because it's kind of an extension on conservative values, family values, pro-life pregnancy centers. So your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think for a church to be the subject of attack, it's probably one of those churches that has finally spoken up on some of these issues. And God bless them for being willing to, in some way, and in the public square, in the public arena, state some beliefs about these things. It may be on the pro-life issue. Maybe it's on the transgender issue. Look, we were attacked on May 8th of last year for our stand on abortion. It could have been for our position on marriage or on religious freedom or on the transgender issue or the LGBTQ. So first of all, I'm grateful for churches that are willing to speak truth into the culture in such a way that, and unfortunately, it makes them vulnerable to these kinds of things. But the other thing I'll say is, I don't know about you two, But I see more anger every single day in our culture, every single day.
Yeah.
I think part of that is the waning influence of Christianity, and the fact that we don't have a lot of limits anymore. We're not self-limiting as individuals and as a culture. And what's happening is the default setting for so many people is becoming violence.
Yeah.
We see it with all. I even hesitate to mention this, but I am horrified by all of these mass shootings and killings that we're seeing. Those have got to be on some kind of pace for record setting too, based on what I've been reading and seeing and hearing about.
Yep.
Because this is a culture that is untethered. There used to be a sense of homogeneity, a more of a total agreement culturally around Judeo-Christian values. Now, I've run into people today that don't even know what that term means. Okay, so that if that doesn't tell you how far we've drifted,
sad.
But it is. And so what held us together was, okay, there's the 10 Commandments, and the 10 Commandments says, "Thou shalt not kill. You shouldn't commit adultery. You shouldn't take the name of the Lord in vain, and you shouldn't steal, and all those things." 10 Commandments.
Yes.
We can't even post them in our schools anymore because somebody might actually see them and read them. That was from the U.S. Supreme Court going back to the 80s. So you remove the influence of Christianity, and what you have left is you're looking at the depravity of the human nature, and that is basically unchecked. All right, so let me take this back to churches. Christians, and when people think about Christians, they think about church. All right, so Christians personified as church stand in the way of the liberal agenda that is being pushed. So in order to advance that liberal agenda, the people who want to do that have to silence, sometimes destroy, certainly sideline the obstacles that are standing in their way. What do they see as standing in their way? Christians individually, Christian organizations and churches, probably even Christian radio.
Sure.
Because you can't, if you have those voices speaking collectively and powerfully in a way that impacts people into that culture, then there's an impediment there to the advancement of that agenda. So they are doing everything they can to malign us, to literally and figuratively attack us. I mean, I'm sitting in my office right now looking through the window that was boarded up for 8 months, Wow. And every day I'm still in some way, shape, or form dealing with that attack.
Wow.
So I think churches become the manifestation of the impediment to the liberal agenda. And they, secondly, are the point of attack for angry people who are, and I'm going to go somewhere that I know we're going to come to later in the show, but I want to mention it. The family breakdown has a great deal to do with this.
Yes.
A huge amount to do with this.
Yeah.
And by the way, I believe the breakdown of the family preceded the waning of the influence of Christianity in this culture. Because Christianity has been historically transmitted through the family unit. That's where young people were exposed to the truth of the gospel. That's where they saw it lived out. And when you have the breakdown, when families break down, even if they were formed or never form, then young people are left to the culture at large, to whatever influences they're subjected to, which would be the internet, the educational system, Hollywood, and all the rest of that. That's where they're getting their, quote, morality. That's where they're getting their ethics. And what do they see? Anger, violence, hypersexuality, and all the rest of this. So they're lashing out at the visible manifestations of what they say stands in the way of getting what they think they want. Tragically, what they think they want will destroy them.
Well, another thing they're angry about is they're told morning, noon, and night that they are the victim of injustice, whether for whatever reason that might be. And now there's a sense of entitlement, and we want what you have, and we want what we think we should have, and that also produces a lot of anger because the left constantly pushes the victimhood of everybody about everything.
And they justify the lawlessness, as we've seen since 2020 and the riots on streets across America. They justify godlessness, lawlessness. And by the way, Juliane, to your point, we'll talk about this in the next segment, fatherlessness leads to lawlessness. That's been proven.
Well, of course it does. Look, the family unit is the most basic form of government in every society. And that's where young people learn about order, working together, obeying, and things like that. And when you don't have that, the outcome is lawlessness, approaching anarchy. And Mary, to your point on injustice, look, we are living out the Humanist Manifesto.
Yep.
We're living out the Communist Manifesto. They warn people, look, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to change society. Create chaos, create a sense of injustice, and hype the anger, break the family down, hypersexualize everything.
Yep.
And they know when you do that, you undermine the very foundation of a society. And let's put the blame where the blame really lies. The blame lies on Satan himself. Satan is having a heyday in America. And fortunately, we know his leash is only so long.
Right.
There is an end to this.
Right.
But in the meantime, many people are being deceived by him. And that's why I say the end of all this for the people who keep going on this path and obviously reject the truth of the gospel. The end of this is incredibly ugly and horrific.
Yes.
Yes, it really is. Before we have a break, Juliane, I want to ask you here, arguments were recently heard. I'm going to switch gears on you a little bit. Arguments were recently heard about a lawsuit over Wisconsin abortion ban, and this has to do with the validity of a 1849 bill on the books, 19th century law. Our Attorney General, Josh Kaul, filed a suit last summer, right after Roe v. Wade was overturned. It's been dormant this whole time. For some reason now it's coming back to life. And I guess I want to ask you about that. And there's a Republican prosecutor is trying to get the lawsuit dismissed. Why so long to bring this to the forefront? And can I get your take on this particular case?
Well, sure. The June 24th, 2022, that was a Friday. We got the wonderful Dobbs decision saying very clearly in there from the U.S. Supreme Court that there is no right to abortion found in the U.S. Constitution, and the issue reverts to the states and their elected representatives. In 1849, our duly elected legislature enacted a law that said that most abortions in this state were prohibited except for a loosely defined life of the mother exception. The governor, who had been duly elected, signed that bill into law. On Tuesday of following the June 24th Supreme Court decision in Dobbs, Josh Kaul, at the behest of Governor Evers, challenged the enforceability of it. And by the way, this is not just about Wisconsin. We are one of about a dozen states that had a pre-Roe law in place. We didn't have a trigger law. We actually had a pre-Roe law that immediately upon the overturning of Roe went into effect. Okay. So we're just kind of on the front leading edge of this in the country, and this is nationwide. Every state's dealing with this in some way, shape, or form. Okay. So they file it, and on June 20, I think it was June 27th or 28th. Normally, what would happen in that is, I think, because it was filed in Dane County, and if you can find a conservative or even moderate judge in Dane County, God bless you. So it was filed here, and I assumed that within the week there would be an injunction placed on the enforcement of that statute. That statute in our state statutes is 940.04. And you say, well, how do you know that? Because I talk about it all the time. And it's been there since 1849. The liberals have had numerous attempts to revoke it prior to 2022 and 2023, and they were never successful. It's been unchanged in there. Well, it's changed a few times, but not revoked. So a call argues that all of these, we have a 24-hour waiting period and a 20-week abortion ban and an ultrasound requirement, and a minors have to get permission from their parents, and you have to give people a copy of Women's Right to Know. And we have a telemed. So we have all these rules and restrictions and regulations on abortion. Call argued that all of those restrictions and regulations subsequent to 1973, when the Supreme Court went completely off the rails and concocted a right to abortion in our U.S. Constitution, that this is his word, they implicitly revoked the 1849 law. Implicitly. So no legislature has never revoked it.
Wow.
So here's the wonderful thing about that. That goes into effect immediately. Planned Parenthood on the afternoon of June 24th said, okay, Wisconsin, we're not doing any more surgical or induced abortions here. So that took out, we only had 4 places, I think, in the state where there were standalone abortion facilities. They all quit. So that meant from July, and this is the numbers I'm going to give you are not from Planned Parenthood. They're from are not from conservative groups. They're from a pro-abortion group. From July 1 through December 31st of last year, Wisconsin saved over 3,000 babies. We were having abortions of over 600 a month in the few years leading up to 2022. So every day that law has been enforced, we've been saving babies from surgical or induced abortions, and we've been saving over 3,000 women from the trauma of abortion. So I'm not unhappy, Mary, that it's taken this long, but let's talk quickly about why it took this long. And I can give you a short answer. April 4th, 2023. What happened on April 4th, 2023, a little over a month ago? We had an election for an open seat in our state Supreme Court.
I knew this would figure. Yep.
So I believe with all my heart that that's exactly what happened. There was no injunction put on on the enforceability of the law.
Wow.
Secondly, the only thing they did in the intervening time between June of 2022 and earlier this month, a National Day of Prayer, which was the 5th of May or something like that. The only thing that happened was the original defendants that Josh Kahl had named, which was Chris Kapenga as president of the Senate, Devin LeMahieu as Senate Majority Leader, and Robin Voss as Speaker of the Assembly, told the court, look, you're suing the wrong people here. You're naming the wrong people. And they got the court to dismiss them. And Josh Kahl named 3 district attorneys, Sheboygan District Attorney, Madison, and Milwaukee. Why? Because those are all 3 places where abortions had been being done, where they had abortion facilities. So that's the only thing that happened. But all of a sudden, April 4th, we find out that the liberal judge, Janet Protasiewicz, beats the very conservative former Supreme Court Justice Daniel Kelly, and suddenly the ideological makeup of our court will change come August.
Radically.
From 4-3 conservative to 4-3 liberal.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, we see, we're going to hold oral arguments in the case involving the 1849 law, and it'll be on, ironically, on National Day of Prayer in Dane County Courthouse.
Yep.
And so they made their cases, and basically Josh Kahl made the case, as I just told you. You can't, this law has been implicitly revoked. And he's saying it's too old. Well, we have lots of laws that were passed in the 19th century that are still on the books and are still being enforced.
Yep.
Age is not the determiner for whether or not a law is enforceable.
That's right. Oh, thank you, Juliane. It saves me a question because I was going to ask you about your take on the Wisconsin Supreme Court election, but we've got to move on. When we come back, we've got a good news story out of California where actually 2 different federal courts have ruled for Christian churches and their right to decline abortion coverage in their health insurance plan. So that's a good news story. Plus, we've got an audio clip from Josh Hawley. You know, America needs stronger men, and the left has spent decades running men down and masculinity. And we're going to talk about that when we come back. Strong men are not the problem. You'll hear a clip from Senator Josh Hawley coming up on Stand Up for the Truth.